Good afternoon. Welcome to CAPIC's bi-weekly immigration update. My name is Burcu Akyol. I'm joining in from Toronto. I'm so happy to have Phil Mooney today as my co-host. He doesn't need an introduction, but in case there are new ICICs watching us, Phil is an RCIC with over 20 years of experience. He's the first CEO of ICCRC, and most importantly, he's a person who has made significant contributions to our profession. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you very much, Burcu.
So, Phil, your experiences and insights are so valuable for us. So I'd like to ask you some questions.
Yeah,
nowadays, as we all know, ICCRC is working on improving different aspects of their system. And I'd like to ask you about the compliance audit reform. How do you think the new system will work? And do you have any tips for those who have not yet completed it?
Yeah, I just completed it on my third or fourth try yesterday. And so I can certainly tell you, I feel like I'm an expert. You know, if you define experts as someone who makes more mistakes than everybody else, well, that's me. So let me just give you a few pointers on the compliance audit. First and foremost, the purpose of the compliance audit was started with ICCRC was to make sure that all of us understand our responsibilities. We all have to live by the regulations and the bylaws of ICCRC. That's what makes us a regulated profession and allows us to do what we do. So with regards to the compliance audit, it's fundamentally a re-registration process every year. You know, we are obligated to do things like have a client account. We're required to have a retainer agreement, and the compliance account was put in to make sure that we were complying with those. Plus, there's a very serious attestation at the end that says we are swearing that we are doing the things necessary to be a regulated professional. So that's the whole purpose. There's been some comment about, is this a registration process or is this a compliance audit? Frankly, it's a registration process and a reaffirmation of our compliance with the regulations that we agreed to abide by when we became members. So just a couple of tips. First and foremost, don't wait till the last minute. It says you need to complete this all at one sitting, which is true. You can't leave it, go to something else because you'll lose it. And if you leave it to the last minute, you're going to find out you don't have some things you really need that will take you a bit longer to get. So do not leave this to the last minute. And by that, I mean, don't leave it until 10 minutes before midnight on August 31st. Take a look at the renewal information sheet. If you go to the link, click on the renewal information sheet, go through it carefully. A couple of things you should have is already signed agreement to be your designated representative by another RCIC or a close personal contact. Have that signed in person because you will have to scan it and upload it. Have your business registration documents available. You'll have to scan and upload them. And there are a few other things that you'll have to have. Now, the rest of the time it's asking you for your name and address. Make sure you have your banking information and any information about agents or any office addresses that you might be using. Have all of that information to hand before you click and start, and preferably do it tomorrow when you have an hour, because then you'll get it done in half an hour or less. And if there's a problem, you can do it the next day. Don't wait until the end. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the best tips that I can give you on the compliance audit.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, I think I finished it in about 20-25 minutes. It didn't take a long time.
Well, one of the things, some of the questions are need to be, let's say, worded a little bit better next time, but they'll ask you for a yes or no answer, and if you answer no, you have to go to further questions. If you answer yes, you think you should just skip the questions, but a couple of them, you still have to answer the next questions with none. It's a glitch in the system, but just as you answer, because the system will not let you complete it unless it's done. And when you're finished, you will get a payment page to pay your fees, and you'll get an email back from ICCRC saying you've done it. If you don't get those, it means you're gonna have to start again and do it again, okay?
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's talk a bit about the travel restrictions. Canada-US border will remain closed until September the 21st. Do you think there will be another extension for the other countries as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I know when we all started this, we thought, oh, well, 2 weeks, you know, it's time to get caught up on some household chores, etc. And then it went 4 weeks. And then as we started to see more and more complexity, you know, we began to realize this isn't going to end anytime soon. Well, the travel restrictions, I don't believe are going to end anytime soon either. And the reason is that they're working. They're, you know, Canada, as you may know, and if anybody is watching what else is happening in the world, you know that we're doing a much better job in terms of numbers of infections and deaths now. Now that we've got it under control, than in most other countries that are important countries to us for immigration purposes, especially the United States, you know, India, Europe. A lot of these countries are having far more difficulties than we are. And I believe, and Canadians in general believe, and they support the government strongly, that that's partly because we're not letting in people, you know, who are reinfecting us. The second reason is we're learning now from countries where reinfections are happening that as long as you have a low background rate, you can deal with people, because it's now painfully obvious that not everyone will do what they're supposed to do. People, you know, and we blame it all on the young, but, you know, I think it's also, you can blame it on people simply being selfish or poorly informed, and people making mistakes. So people go out to bars, they drink too much, they get too close. You have people who forget. And those kind of people, we're always going to be at risk from until we have either a cure or until we have a vaccine that protects the vulnerable. And I'd ask you, please help protect me, okay? I fall into so many of the high-risk groups that you know, if we don't do this, I'm going to be self-quarantined in my basement for the next year. I'm not sure why I have to be staying in my basement, but I think, you know, my wife is overdoing it. But then again, I'm being safe, okay? So please, yes, follow all of the rules, but as consultants, we shouldn't be telling our clients that we expect these restrictions to ease. They're not going to ease until big events happen, in my opinion, and we're not going to be able to do business normally as long as infections continue to spread.
Yeah. What about international students? Students coming from the US, they no longer need a study permit that was issued on or before March 18th. So do you think we will hear an update on this date for students coming from countries other than the US?
I don't think we're going to hear much until there's serious issues about people coming for the January semester. I have 2 grandchildren who are in university, and one of them is at a university where most of the classes are online. The other one has some labs. So what's happened is all of the Canadian universities, post-secondary education institutions, have set in place their plans for the first semester that runs from September to December. And so I don't believe there will be any change for students. Most of those courses will be online, so individuals from offshore can take those courses from where they live as opposed to being in Canada. And I don't see, you know, and if any of them have courses where they must be here in person, they're already here, all right, or they will be coming in the next few weeks. So I don't see that changing, especially as we're getting more and more information from the universities in the US, which have already opened now for a week or two. And we're seeing huge numbers of contaminations and infections. They just can't control it. Again, you know, we might have a chance to control the ones if that happens in Canada too, because our students are no different from anybody else. If it happens here, we've got a low background infection or infectious rate, so we might be able to control them. But I don't believe that will mean anything is going to change until they start facing the fact that there are students who will be getting their study permits and coming in for the January cohort. And the universities don't know what that's like. They're hoping that means classes will be there in person, and some of that hope is based on a vaccine. Some of it is based on low levels of infection in countries, especially source countries. I'm not so sure, again, since most of now, if you were to say this is for students coming from China, you might be able to make a case, okay, that we're not getting this coming and spreading the virus. But if it was India, that would be entirely different, or Brazil, or Mexico, or the US. that would be different. So I don't see any changes until maybe looking around November time to see if there's going to be changes in the schools first, to see if we can expect changes in admissions into Canada for courses that are completely available online.
So we'll wait and see. There are a lot of unknowns. Okay, so I have a question about Express Entry. Since March 7, there have been 2 all-program draws only. What do you think the trend will be like until life goes back to normal?
We're going to see, I think, very few selections for federal skilled worker, and it's deliberate. What IRCC doesn't want, and Canadians don't want, are people to be coming into the country by the tens of thousands for jobs that aren't here anymore, or for jobs, that their spouses won't have jobs to go to, or their families won't have jobs to go to if they have, children coming in as permanent residents, because we don't yet know the full impact of the virus on the jobs. I would think by October or November, we will know much better. If the trend continues, we've already recovered about 3/4 of the jobs that were lost. If we get closer to 95%, then I think you'll see a general easing. I think we can also take comfort in the fact that the government has clearly stated they want more immigrants to Canada. They want more people to come in. So while we can look at the federal skilled worker and look at the numbers, the pass mark continuing to be very high and the selections to be very few, which are corollaries of each other, had more selections, the pass mark would drop. I believe they're doing that on purpose, but it's building up a backlog, if you will, of eligible people. I believe that the government, once this has passed, and it will pass, we're going to be looking at makeup immigration to get back up to the average numbers. Immigration permanent resident applications, there was just a story out today, are down something like 35% in the second quarter, or even more. And as a result, Canada won't hit its target of about 370,000 immigrants this year. I expect that there will be, if everything was great by December, you can look at next year being way over the quota. They will process, okay, and they will accept more because they understand, and they've stated clearly that immigration will help us recover from this pandemic. Short term, we don't want to bring in people who have no chance at working, but in the long term, we need more immigrants to get our economy and rolling. Okay.
Okay, Phil, thank you. So I think everybody would agree that the pandemic significantly changed the way people work. I guess we're all more tech savvy now. How about IRCC? What kind of changes do you think we will see in the way they operate after the pandemic?
Yeah, I agree that we're all becoming more tech savvy. I mean, this conference is another example. This is, there are now so many different video conference facilities that, I can never remember which password I have to use for which or how to log on to which one. So it's always a challenge. But I don't think we can look at this and say, oh, good, IRCC is going to become a much more efficient organization because of this. In fact, ICCRC is a very large government department. It's a department in chaos right now. To be perfectly blunt, it's in chaos because it doesn't adapt to change, massive change well. It can bring in a program and do some things quickly, like we saw with the refugees from Syria. It can react to one-offs, like a one country not allowing visa, going to visa exempt or becoming a visa required country. And it can respond to changes in the law and the regulations, but those processes are always well thought through in advance. It simply doesn't have the culture or the management expertise to adapt to the changes that are now being forced upon it, because, I mean, they pulled everybody back, from all the visa posts to come into Canada, but they still haven't found ways for everybody to work together, to work efficiently. It's created enormous chaos. I can only feel great sympathy for the management of IRCC. They're working really hard and huge, extraordinarily long hours to try and deal with emergencies. And one key testament to that is the fact that they have a hard time processing things like confirmation of permanent residency. They're having a very hard time trying to process essential areas like permanent resident files. I think we can all look towards the kind of and they at the same time they're trying to keep essential services and those kind of things coming to the country. So right now they're in crisis management. I do not expect anything to change in the way they do business overall, because so many of their changes require legislative and changes, and that's not going to happen in the short term. So I fully expect that this is going to be a basically wait and see type deal where we're going to have to put up with longer and uncertain processing times for certain categories, that we can all take advantage of the ones where things work very well and very quickly. And I just think that's going to keep going now until they get back. Now, there are some encouraging signs. They have come back and said that several of the processing centers for biometrics are now open in many countries. It looks like they're going to open in India and in some other countries in Asia, so that the biometrics issue will be resolved, because you can't come unless you have biometrics, and they haven't backed away on that. I expect those things, it's a good sign when those things start to happen, but until they can get back and operating fully, which will again depend on safe travel, vaccines, all of that, we should just continue to have to put up with this, basically. I don't see them coming in with any great new computer system to solve everything, or like video conferencing, they'll make as much use of that as they can, but the basic processing of all the files, they're a factory that has had all of its factories, moved, turned upside down, all of its people moved around. So all of their processing centers, are having a very difficult time, and I just think that's going to continue for the next 3 to 6 months.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Finally, I'd like to ask what you think about the two federal business immigration programs, self-employed persons and startup visa. They're obviously two categories that are open to misunderstandings because their criteria are not as straightforward as other types of applications. What can IRCCs do to protect their clients from applying with little or no chance of success?
Unfortunately, some of these programs just weren't very popular because everyone was doing express entry and everyone was doing spousals and all of those programs. But for example, the self-employed program has been around for a long time. It's changed substantially over the last 10 years. And what's happened is it seems to be a really great way to get people into Canada if you can't get them enough points. My strong advice to anyone thinking of doing a self-employed permanent resident or even a work permit file is to think about one word in particular, and that is significant. Okay, if you're trying to get a work permit for someone who is an artist or a athlete, they must be able to provide a significant benefit to Canada. So don't take a case unless it involves an Olympic athlete or a world champion or an absolutely world-class coach. Don't take those cases. And by all means, don't take cases that are not artists, athletes, or entertainers. Don't take, and to be honest, people have tried to, in countries said, well, a graphic designer or a photographer. Well, if you were Yusuf Karsh, the most famous Canadian photographer whose photographs are art, okay, think about a photographer that way, but don't come and say, well, you're a photographer and you take wedding photos, in your country for the last 20 years and you make nice pictures. That's not going to work as a self-employed or a graphic designer. If a graphic designer is famous because, they're doing creative work in terms of audio animation or things like that, okay, think about it. But by and large, the C11 work permit that speaks to this is the hardest work permit to get. Okay, of all work permits I've ever worked on, and most people that have been around a while stayed away from it for that reason. So don't take cases like special self-employed unless you've done them before with great success. And the same thing on the permanent resident side. It's a great way, and it's faster now. It's probably less than a year to get someone in. Make sure these people are making giving a significant benefit, there are very specific rules. And by all means, I've had people come to me and said, oh, my client is going to open a restaurant with two Canadian jobs. He's creating a significant benefit. No, a significant benefit would be 2,000 Canadian jobs. Okay. Even then, if they're not artists or athletes, they still can't apply for permanent resident because it's highly restricted. So people are looking for things to do. They're trying to find ways to supplement their income. Don't go that way. I mean, keep it to the very specific purpose intended. The startup visa is another issue, very, very important, because it's all of a sudden the numbers are going up. Now, just a couple of key elements to a startup visa. This is for an individual who has a unique idea that could be commercially successful in Canada and is looking for financial help, and the government is going to marry that person with a provider of financial assistance and provide permanent residence. But the individual must be the originator of the idea. Now, it's not good enough. I mean, I have lots of ideas, that might work. The idea must be proven, the concept proven. That means it must have been used somewhere and protected, and it must be, working well somewhere. And then you have to have that idea. It's launch ready, if you will. So you need money to get it off the ground. And typically a startup visa person doesn't have the money. All right. So these are elements to the program. Well, what's happening now, and there are some specific cases out there, at least 2 different offerings and probably more, people are saying, give us a lot of money. Give us $180,000. Give us $150,000. We will pair you with an idea and with a designated incubator, and they'll get you your approval letter, and we can then put the package together and apply to IRCC. And people are being asked, because there are no longer any investor programs, and because it's difficult to get into some of the other programs that require an investment, there are no passive investor programs. This program is now being marketed that way, and it is wrong. And not only is it wrong,
sounds wrong.
IRCC has been advised of these, I would almost call them scams, okay, of these strategies to try and get people to take advantage of the startup visa. And so they're going to be watching, because another element that people don't know, and I've never seen it in any of this literature promoting the program this way, is that once that idea is proposed and there is a designated incubator signed on with a letter that authorizes the person, it goes to a peer review. A peer review means another incubator is going to look at this and say, is it a good idea? Well, they're going to know if it's not a good idea. Okay. I guess finally I would say that even people who come, and you might hear of a success story, they get their permanent residence. Well, over the next 25 years, they're going to be looking over their shoulder, because this IRCC is looking at these now. And if there is any indication that the person who came in the country it wasn't their idea, they paid money to buy the idea and to buy the approval letter, those people will be, stripped of their citizenship if they have it, and or their permanent residency, and they'll be deported. So they have to be really careful. And I'd just like to warn of one other scam that's out there now. There are some very sophisticated scams which take an RCIC, like you or me, take our name. They then offer jobs to people, and they will recruit engineers or technical people, and they will tell them that there's a job in Montreal or in Toronto, and then they will interview that person 3 or 4 times with construction experts and other people, and it will look very authentic, and then they will offer that person a job until they ask them to send money to Canada. Money to Canada goes into a US bank account. The people, they have websites, it looks very professional, and it looks like a job. And the people who are doing this are not in Canada. They're complete scam artists, and they're preying on immigrants, and they're preying on immigrants who really want to come to Canada. So just be careful about that. If you find anything, what's helping a lot is that report it. If you see anything like that, report it to ICCRC, and send it into the fraud hotline. do everything you can to protect our clients from all of that.
Yeah, I recently experienced something similar. Somebody copied all my photos and they created a Facebook account with my name, with my company name, and they advertised for full scholarships in Canada. And then I somehow realized, somebody told me, and then the account closed. But I don't know who paid what amounts to them. It's terrible. I reported them, of course.
A real serious problem. Yeah. All we can do is report. You know, all take every action we can to prevent it, and report, because we can't not do business, and we can't. We have to be registered with IRCC, and that can't be a secret registration. So everyone's vulnerable. It's not personal, but we need to report any instance we see of that.
True. Okay, Phil, before we say goodbye, in a webinar you did at the beginning of the pandemic, it was March, I guess, I remember a piece of advice you shared. You said you should come out of this as a better ICIC. So challenging times are not over yet. If I ask for another piece of advice, what would you tell us?
Yeah, I think what the key to success today now is, because that was in the hope that we would be out of this in 2 or 3 months at the longest. The challenge now is to persist. That's what we have to do. This is not a short-term sharp pain. This is a long-term pain, if you will, that we're going through. Just keep doing the right things. Prepare yourself for the turnaround, okay, to maximize it. Protect your cash flow. Absolutely. If you're having trouble, if your volumes are down, protect your cash flow. Stop all unnecessary expense. The government's been great to help out with the benefits that are there, but as this goes into 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, that won't be enough. So protect yourself, and just keep doing the right things. Keep learning. Look for new opportunities. There are some areas in this program that are doing really well. Anyone who wants to get a work permit, make sure it's in a essential service, because not only will you get a work permit, you'll get it fast. LMIAs are going really fast for those kinds of applications. So, owner operators are in high demand in Canada. If you can work with people and make sure that you're looking for new avenues and new ways to create, and then stay informed. But bottom line, persistence is the key to success. It reminds me of when I used to be in the corporate world, and one of my biggest customers was McDonald's worldwide, and I would go into their offices, and they always had a sign that said, persistence is the secret to success. It isn't education, it isn't good luck, it isn't hard work, it's persistence. And so that's what we have to keep doing. Just keep doing the right things, and we'll all come through this. And by all means, everyone, stay safe.
Thank you. So we've come to the end of our immigration updates. I'd like to thank Phil Mooney for joining in. It was great listening to you as always.
Thank you.
Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and stay tuned for the next update.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Burcu.